During COVID, the Prime Minister said that Barbados, we need to find, well, let me backtrack. She said that it was her plan and she was promising Barbadians 20,000 jobs, right? 20,000 jobs. And she set up what I call a jobs and investment committee. And this jobs and investment committee had 8 persons on it. This person, the persons on that committee, I can try to see if I remember all right now. Former Prime Minister Ornafa, the former Finance Minister Chris Sinclair, Dodridge Miller, this was the insurance guy, Dr. Anna Lee Bob, Senator John Rogers.
Oh Lord, not him again.
Yes, he was on it. I can't recall that's about 5. I can't recall the others right now. But these 8 committees, which were chaired by these 8 persons, met twice. And the role of this committee, and by the way, Ornafa's passed now, but the role of this committee was to create 20,000 jobs in the Barbados economy. That was what me and Motley was saying, right? This Jobs and Investment Committee, I wrote an article to the Nation newspaper, and I did a video on it as well, that this Jobs and Investment Committee recommended to the government of Barbados to go and borrow $200 million from the IADB. And the signature on this letter was Ryan Strong. And he was saying that in section 4, right, he was saying that in section 4, this Jobs and Investment Committee to find 20,000 jobs, he was saying that this specific committee made the recommendation to the government to go and borrow this $200 million. I checked it out. I put it out there to the public. This committee met twice, and Ornafa's dead. Since then, no changes were announced. Nothing happened. They were not meeting. And this was since COVID. But early, Ryan Strong could be sending a letter to borrow $200 million on recommendation from this committee that was not meeting. Right?
In all fairness, though, Ryan likes to saying things. All right, he loves to sing. Give him his death warrant, and he was saying it,
But that's worse than death warrant. But that's corruption, Caswell. Then that's misrepresentation.
Yeah.
That's misrepresentation that you could be saying that this committee gave you the advice to borrow this money and the committee was not meeting.
Ryan Strong.
Yeah, but the question is, for what are they borrowing $200 million if you're talking about creating 20,000 jobs? What exactly would they have done? So was that money actually borrowed, or?
The money was borrowed. He wrote a letter to the president of the IDB, and this letter was included in the newspaper, signed by him. So I wrote back a letter to the editor of the Nation, and I also wrote it to Barbados Underground, and I also did a video on it, querying how come he could have his signature on this paper to the IDB to borrow this $200 million. They were saying that it was only loans for COVID to help the government achieve fiscal space, but they didn't have anything about any jobs. I said before that Ryan Strong, what he did was corrupt. I wrote an open letter to him, and this letter was published in the Nation newspaper, and it read something like this. Dear Mr. Strong, this letter is an issuance of grave concern with the government of Barbados and the IDB loan seeking to borrow US $200 million and the heightened perception of corruption and unethical practices within government. Taken from the summary of Transparency International, This year's Corruption Perception Index paints a grim picture of the state of corruption worldwide. The pandemic is not just a health crisis or economic crisis, but a corruption crisis, with countless lives lost due to government corruption undermining a fair and equitable response to the issues of the day. In my letter to the Nation newspaper, featured on Barbados in December 2022, submitted by myself, I raised an alarm to sections of a letter to the acting president of the IDB, signed by yourself as Minister in the Ministry of Finance. Component 4 of that letter to the acting IDB president said that the loan is for economic and fiscal strengthening post-pandemic. So that was the borrowing loans for after the pandemic. I went on to say that the blatant red flag in component 4 of your letter is the use of reasoning for the borrowing of this loan, which are the recommendations from a progress report of the measures prioritized by the Jobs and Investment Council. Investigations into the missing report revealed that at no point in time did this Jobs and Investment Committee or Council submit a report or publish their findings and recommendations to the public via consultation, town hall, press conference, written media, or else. The Jobs and Investment Council met in April 2020, and according to the Prime Minister, the members were expected to report back to the government within 2 to 4 weeks. I said again, the Jobs and Investment Council met in April 2020, and according to the Prime Minister, they were supposed to report back to the government in 2 to 4 weeks. Some developments changed the nature of operations of the committee and these working groups, because that's what you were calling them, working groups. And since being established 2 years ago, former Prime Minister Onafa has died, and the former Finance Minister Chris Sinclair is now working abroad at the World Bank. Please do not allow the announcement of a VAT-free day to distract from the circumstances of a non-transparent environment. Therefore, the allegations of unethical practices and heightened perceptions in government, hearing that the minister may have falsified a letter to the IDB and claiming the use of recommendations for the Jobs and Investment Committee as a reason for borrowing that loan. The non-functionality of this committee is hereby in question and raises a challenge with queries on if the committee did in fact make the recommendations to borrow the 200 million US from the IDB as contained in the letter. So in a bid for transparency, Minister Strong, you are being asked to publish this progress report mentioned in your letter as the reason for committing Barbados to an additional $200 million in debt. And the publication should include all members of these working groups and their pay and compensation, the absent report, which will clear up any allegations of wrongdoing against the minister's name. Minister Strong addressed the public twice since that time, since the alarms were raised about this report, both in Parliament and in press conference, and he made no public response to the issues raised. So analysis from Transparency International shows that corruption not only undermines a global response to the pandemic, but contributes to a continual crisis of democracy. And I went on to say, I wish to hand this matter over to Mr. Darwin Doty, who is supposed to be the newly appointed head of Barbados' anti-corruption unit. With regards, signed KEMAR STUART.